Inside your smartphone right now are elements you have never heard of. Neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, lanthanum. 17 rare earth elements, invisible, unnoticed, and absolutely essential. They are in the vibration motor that buzzes in your pocket. They are in the magnets that spin every electric vehicle motor. They are in the targeting systems of fighter jets and precision missiles. They are in every wind turbine blade and every MRI machine. Without rare earths, the modern world does not function. And right now, one country controls nearly all of them. China produces approximately 85% of the world's rare earth elements. But raw production is only part of the story. China also refines and processes over 90% of global supply, meaning even the rare earths mined in Australia, the United States, or Africa are shipped to China for processing before they reach the global market. This is not a coincidence. It is the result of decades of deliberate strategy. No other commodity in modern history has been controlled so completely by a single nation. Not oil in Saudi Arabia. Not diamonds in South Africa. Nothing comes close to China's grip on rare earths. In 1987, Deng Xiaoping visited Inner Mongolia and made a statement that would define the next 40 years of global geopolitics. He said, "The Middle East has oil. China has rare earths." At the time, it sounded like boasting. It was a blueprint. Through the 1990s and 2000s, China subsidized its rare earth industry aggressively, flooded global markets with cheap supply, and systematically drove Western competitors out of business. The Mountain Pass mine in California, once the world's largest, shut down in 2002, unable to compete with Chinese prices. By the time the world realized what had happened, China owned the supply chain from mine to magnet. In September 2010, a Chinese fishing trawler collided with Japanese Coast Guard vessels near disputed islands in the East China Sea. Japan arrested the captain. China's response was unprecedented. Without formal announcement, Chinese customs officials stopped clearing rare earth shipments to Japan. Exports fell by 40%. Japanese manufacturers, who depend on rare earths for electronics, cars, and defense components, panicked. Prices for some rare earths spiked 2,000% on global markets. Japan released the captain within weeks. The message was received loud and clear in every capital on earth: China had a weapon it was willing to use. The dependency runs deeper than most people realize. A single F-35 fighter jet requires approximately 900 pounds of rare earth materials, in its engines, radar, electronics, and guidance systems. A Virginia-class submarine requires nearly 9,000 pounds. Every guided missile, every laser targeting system, every night vision scope relies on materials that overwhelmingly come from China. On the civilian side, each electric vehicle requires between 1 and 2 kilograms of rare earth magnets. The global EV fleet is growing by tens of millions of vehicles per year. Every wind turbine uses between 200 and 500 kilograms of rare earth magnets. The green energy transition and the defense industry are both built on Chinese supply. Here is what most people miss. Mining rare earths is only the first step. Processing them into usable materials, separating, refining, converting or into the metals and alloys that go into magnets and electronics, is the true choke point. And China controls over 90% of that processing capacity globally. Even if Australia opens new mines tomorrow, even if the United States restarts Mountain Pass at full capacity, the ore still needs to be refined. Building a rare earth refinery from scratch takes 10 to 15 years of permitting, construction, and expertise development. The expertise itself is the barrier. China has been building it for 40 years. The West is starting from almost zero. The wake-up call has finally arrived. The United States passed the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act, directing billions toward domestic critical mineral supply chains. The European Union launched its Critical Raw Materials Act. Japan has invested heavily in rare earth partnerships across Africa and Central Asia. Australia is developing new mines and refining capacity. Canada has declared rare earths a national security priority. A loose coalition of democracies, sometimes called the Mineral Security Partnership, is attempting to build an alternative supply chain from scratch. Over $35 billion has been pledged collectively. But experts warn it may take until the 2030s before any meaningful alternative capacity exists, if it arrives in time. The 2010 Japan embargo was a warning shot. What came in 2023 and 2024 was a coordinated escalation. In July 2023, China announced export controls on gallium and germanium, critical for semiconductors and night vision equipment. In October 2023, graphite export restrictions followed, targeting EV battery supply chains. In 2024, China restricted the export of rare earth processing and separation technology itself, making it harder for any country to even build the refining capacity needed to compete. Each move was surgical and deliberate. Each targeted a sector where the West is most exposed. And experts warn that these controls are only the beginning of what China is willing to do. There is a reason rare earth mining left the West decades ago, and it was not just economics. Processing rare earths generates vast quantities of toxic waste, including radioactive thorium and uranium byproducts, acid runoff, and chemical solvents. Environmental regulations in the United States, Europe, and Australia made rare earth mining increasingly difficult and expensive. China faced no such restrictions. Chinese mining regions like Jiangxi Province and Inner Mongolia bear the environmental damage from decades of extraction, contaminated rivers, poisoned farmland, and toxic waste lakes visible from satellite. China effectively subsidized the world's clean technology supply chain by absorbing the environmental destruction at home. It is a cost that has rarely appeared in the price of a smartphone. The rare earth war is the defining resource conflict of our era, and it is already underway. China holds the dominant position today. But the monopoly is not unbreakable. New mines are opening in Greenland, Canada, Australia, and Tanzania. Deep-sea mining of rare earth nodules on the ocean floor could eventually unlock enormous new supply. Recycling rare earths from end-of-life electronics is growing. And materials scientists are racing to develop rare earth-free magnets and motors. But all of these alternatives need time, a decade or more. The critical question is whether the West will build alternative supply chains fast enough, before the next major geopolitical crisis gives China the leverage to shut off supply entirely. The answer to that question will shape the balance of power for the rest of the 21st century.